Welcome to the Battle of Skill. In Boss, you build a deck of your choice, come to the table with it, and never shuffle it. You have access to all of the cards in your deck anytime. And with no drawing, no dice rolls, no coin flips, no RNG, Boss is a luckless trading card game where you can play at your absolute best every time. In this video, I'll be teaching you how to play, starting with opening a starter deck. Your deck in Boss can be one of three colors: red, yellow, or blue. In this video, I'll be opening a yellow starter. If you'd like to see the red or blue starter get played, you can check out the Game in Action video on the Boss website's homepage, where I play blue against my team members red. A Boss starter deck box comes with two packages inside. The first package is a smaller but complete Blitz deck used to play the Blitz mode of Boss. The second deck is all of the cards that you combine with your Blitz deck to get a full starter deck. So you combine these two piles together and you get a full starter deck. Blitz is the mode that players play when they're first learning the game. It teaches you the mechanics in a very broken and very fast format. It doesn't give you as many options because you're playing with a smaller version of the deck, and once you've played one game of Blitz, you're pretty much ready to go with a full deck of Boss, custom made however you'd like. Opening the Blitz deck reveals 3 rules cards, which come inside of every starter deck. We'll read through these to learn how to play the game. The first rules card gives us an introduction to the game, giving us a welcome, explaining deck building, and explaining the rules for Blitz battles. The first thing that it tells us is that we'll have 2 numbers to track: life, beginning at 30, and Vim beginning at 0. Next, it tells us about deck building. Since we'll be playing with the pre-constructed Blitz deck, we don't need to worry about this step. If you'd like to build a custom deck, you can come back to this at the end of the tutorial. Now it explains the rules for Blitz battles. It tells us to start with 15 life instead of the normal 30, to play with our pre-constructed Blitz deck, and to half our boss's call condition. We'll read that on the back of our boss later in the tutorial. Next, the rules tell us about the board setup, using symbols to dictate where cards should go. A board in Boss has 4 rows and 5 columns. Let's go ahead and set up our side of the board, and then I'll give us an opponent. First, let's find our wizards. The wizards in a Blitz deck will be right after the top card. So, right after your boss. You can tell that these are wizards because they have the wizard name at the top. Let's form 3 columns with these. Next, let's set up our boss's position. Your boss starts face down on the blurry side, off to the left in that first column. Finally, the remaining cards are split into 2 piles, based on card type. Your summons, indicated by the card name there, go into a pile called your castle. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you can access your castle anytime you want during the game. As for your spells, these can go into your spellbook. Just like your castle, it's a pile that you can look at anytime to access your spells. The last thing we need is a graveyard, which I'll say will go here. Alright, and here's our opponent, a Pyromaniac player. The only spots remaining on the battlefield are the 6 spots that can each hold 1 summon. Each one is directly in front of a player's wizard. So 3 for us and 3 for our opponent. The final thing to note is that when you first set your wizards on the battlefield, they'll start face down. Now we're on to the third set of rules, the turn order. It begins with the startup phase, then moves to the main phase, and finally the ending phase. Let's play out a startup phase as an example. You'll follow this order. First, you gain Vim equal to your boss's knowledge. Glorious Sun has 3, but since I'm going first, I get 1 less Vim on my first turn. My Vim goes from 0 to 2. Then I ready my cards. Since it's my first turn, my wizards are face down, and I just turn them up and set them into any column that I want. That means if you're going second, you get to set up your wizards in response to your opponent. The final thing that you do during your startup phase is call summons. Like said at the beginning, you access your entire castle, you just pick it up, and pick whatever summon you would like to call. Let's say this one sounds appealing to me. Moonlight Flower. Each summon tells you its call cost in the middle. The call cost for Moonlight Flower is to rest any yellow wizard. I'm playing a yellow deck, so all of my wizards will be yellow. And to rest a card simply means to turn it on its side. So, if I want to play Moonlight Flower, during my startup phase, I pay the cost of resting any of my yellow wizards. Then I simply call it, placing it in front of the wizard that I rested, placing it into that spot. So I have just called Moonlight Flower in front of Forest Sage into Forest Sage's spot. You can call as many times as you'd like during your startup phase, as long as you're playing into empty spots and in front of the wizard you're resting. Let's say I call Hedera. I'll rest Angel of Light and place Hedera in front of it. Hedera can be called by resting any yellow wizard, so this works. And now I'll call Circle of Life. Circle of Life has to be called by resting Tomb Caretaker specifically. That's this wizard. That means, for this setup, I could only ever call Circle of Life to my right column. And that completes the startup phase. Now we move on to the main phase. Now is the time to do actions. You can do as many actions as you'd like during your main phase, and you can arrange them in any order that you'd like. You could attack, and then cast a spell, and then attack again, and then use an action ability, and then call your boss. You could do them in any way you'd like. On this turn, I'll show you how to use an action ability. To begin, first look for all the cards that you have that have the action keyword. In this case, I have 3 of them. Let's look at Hedera's action ability. It has a cost next to it. Anytime you see red, bold, italic text, that is a cost that you have to pay in order to use the ability. In this case, I can use the action ability of Hedera, pay the cost of resting it, and by doing so, I can give a summon I control 3 strength. I'll go ahead and do that. That sounds really good. The number on the bottom is the summon strength, and it's used to determine who wins battles. Since Hedera can give strength, I think protecting it would be a good idea, so I'll give it 3 strength. Now let's take a look again at the action abilities that are available to me. All of them cost rest. And since all of these cards are already rested, I can't pay the cost to use any of those abilities. I have no cards that have any remaining action abilities that I can pay for, so I'm done with my turn, because I've decided to not cast any spells or declare any attacks. It's worth noting at this point that you cannot interact with a player who has not started a turn. Meaning, I can't attack my opponent right now because they haven't walked up to the battlefield yet. Now that I'm ending my turn, this is a great time to explain trigger abilities. Let's look at Moonlight Flower. Like the name implies, trigger abilities occur when a certain condition is met. And they're optional, so I can choose to use them or not. In this case, the trigger ability of Moonlight Flower is, at the end of each turn, I gain 1 life. That's a good effect. Let's go ahead and apply it. I will use the trigger of Moonlight Flower to gain 1 life, bringing me to 16. Now Red is going to start their turn. First thing that happens during their startup phase is they gain Vim. Since their boss is Pyromaniac, their knowledge is 3. So their Vim increases by 3, going from 0 to 3. Then they ready their cards. Nothing is there to be readied, but since it's their first turn, they can take their face down wizards and arrange them into any columns they would like. Let's say they'll go in these columns. And finally, they get to call up to 3 summons. Just like before, you get to look at your entire castle and pick any 3 you want to call, paying the call cost for each. So let's say they want to call a Lava Giant, a Magma Soldier, and a Flameunt. And that's it for the startup phase. Now on to the main phase. Before we start, let's take a look at Pyromaniac's call condition in order to set up our strategy. Pyromaniac's call condition is if you have declared 12 or more attacks. Since we're playing Blitz mode, the condition is cut in half, so it's actually going to be 6 or more attacks. So let's see how to attack. In Boss, a card can attack if it has a strength value. This number on the bottom of each summon is the strength, and you use it to determine which one wins a battle. In order to declare an attack, you rest the card you want to attack with, and then pick your target. You could do a card attack, which is available if there's any other card with a strength to target, or you could do a player attack if the column of the attacker is open. We'll see more of that in just a second. First, let's do a card attack with Lava Giant. Lava Giant right now can attack any of the following cards: Circle of Life, Hedera, Moonlight Flower, or it could attack Flameunt or Magma Soldier. You can attack your own stuff, but let's do an attack on Hedera. You compare the strength values, 7 versus 6, and they will each deal damage to each other simultaneously equal to their strengths. So, Lava Giant is going to lose 6 strength, and Hedera is going to lose 7 strength. Hedera will go down to 0 and be defeated, going to the graveyard. Lava Giant will lose 6 strength and go down to 1. That's a permanent change. The next time it battles, it'll only have 1 strength to fight with. Next turn. At the start of our battle between Lava Giant and Hedera, Flameunt had a trigger ability. When another summon you control declares an attack, this gains 2 strength. So it'll go up to 4. Now, let's try to do an attack with Magma Soldier. Since the column that it's in is empty, it's allowed to do a player attack. I'm going to demonstrate a player attack for you now, but for the sake of our strategy here with Pyromaniac, I'm going to rewind this action and just do this as an example. You'll see why in just a minute. So, let's pretend Magma Soldier does a player attack. There's actually 2 triggers that happen right now. Flameunt is going to trigger, going up to 6. And Magma Soldier says when this declares an attack, it gains 3 strength. So let's bring it up to 6. Now, just like before, you can pick your target for the attack, only you get the extra target of the player, since the column that it's in is open. So, let's have it do a player attack. If this goes through, I'll lose life equal to the strength of the attacker. So, if this was to go through, I would go down to 10. But there is a way for me to defend this. I can take a summon adjacent to the attacking column and move it to block. So I can block with either one of these. Let's say I block with Circle of Life. Once I move it over, this is just a regular card battle. Now it's 6 versus 5. Magma Soldier would go to 1, and I would protect my life with Circle of Life. Of important note, you are allowed to block even with rested summons. Those are allowed to move over to defend against a player attack. So once again, you can block a player attack using adjacent summons to the column that is being attacked. Now, let's rewind. I'm actually going to have Magma Soldier attack the Moonlight Flower, and you'll see why in just a second. But 5 strength versus 6 leaves Magma Soldier at 1, and Moonlight Flower defeated. Now, let's have Flameunt do the player attack. When Flameunt does the player attack, this column cannot be defended. There's no summon adjacent to the player attacked column. So, this damage is actually guaranteed. If I had 6 life left, that would be game over for me. And now the final thing that we'll do is just a little bit of checkup. We'll just put a number on our boss to track how many attacks we've done. And that's it for Red's main phase. Now it's the ending phase, and we move on to yellow's next startup phase. Alright, on to my startup phase. My knowledge is 3, because my boss is Glorious Sun. So I gain 3. Then I ready. All of these cards move from their rested state to the ready state. And now I get to call. The spot in front of Tomb Caretaker has already been taken up by a summon, so I can't call using Tomb Caretaker at all. I want to call 2 Gianets, so let's do that. Note that both of these can be called with any yellow wizard, so these calls are okay. And now onto the main phase. Once again, I want to set up our strategy for the turn by checking out Glorious Sun's call condition. Glorious Sun's call condition is if I have at least 20 more life than my opponent. And, because we're in Blitz, that condition is halved, so I only need to have 10 more life than my opponent in order to call Glorious Sun. And I'm actually going to be able to do that this turn. I won't be able to do it normally. I'll actually need the assistance of some spells. And fortunately, I've saved up 5 Vim in order to cast some spells. So, I'm in my main phase, I pick up my spellbook, and I can just do this as one of my actions. Let me give an example spellcast first before I do my actual play. This is Nature's Grace. It's a very simple spell that costs 2 Vim, and when I play it, I gain 4 life. In order to cast a spell, you first pay the cost in the top left, so I would go down to 3 in this example. Then, I reveal it to my opponent. I apply the effect, gain 4 life, and then it goes to my graveyard once it's done. So, that was my example. Let's rewind. I want to cast a spell with a unique ability. I want to cast Kudzu first. Kudzu is a spell that can enchant a summon. That means you place it underneath a summon of your choice and give it a brand new ability. In this case, the ability is actually a trigger that happens whenever I gain life. It copies the life gain as strength gain. So I want to cast this spell. First, I pay 3 Vim, going down to 2. I reveal it to my opponent, and then I apply the effect. So instead of going to the graveyard, my enchantment is going to go right here. And now you can read the ability as if this card had this effect. Now I want to cast my Nature's Grace. So I'll go down to 0, reveal it, gain 4 life, and when that happens, my trigger occurs to bring me up to 12. Nature's Grace goes to the graveyard after being used, and now let's do some attacks. I want to make sure that this Giant End is able to do a player attack against my opponent, which means I want to clear away this Flame End and this Magma Soldier, so that when this player attack goes down this column, this Magma Soldier is not able to block. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll use my Giant End to attack Flame End. 6 versus 8, my Giant End will be left with 2 strength, and Flame End is defeated and goes to the graveyard. Then I'll have Circle of Life attack Magma Soldier. 5 versus 1, Circle of Life goes to 4, and Magma Soldier is defeated. And now I've set up my player attack perfectly, so let's do it. This damage is guaranteed to hit, so my opponent will lose 12 life, going down to only 3. Now I have at least 10 or more life than my opponent, so I am able to call my boss as one of my actions during my main phase. So let's do it. To call your boss, simply turn it face up. This boss is very special because it has 2 passive abilities that changes how it works in a pretty big way. Passives are abilities that are always active on the card. The passive abilities of Glorious Sun are first, that its strength is always equal to my life. That means that it currently has 14 strength. And the second effect is that all damage that would be dealt to it is dealt to me instead. So it's as if my life took form. Bosses have unique rules for attacking. This spot that bosses are located in represents them being gigantic. It's as if they cover the entire battlefield. That means they have some special rules when it comes to doing player attacks. Remember, player attacks only happen if the column of the attacker is open. Well, if a boss takes up all 3 spots, what happens? It means that they can only do a player attack if the entire battlefield is open. So that means no summons, and their boss can't be face up. So right now Lava Giant is preventing me from doing a player attack. Also, bosses can block player attacks from anywhere, but like I said, this spot represents them covering the entire battlefield, so they do not move when blocking. They simply say, I am blocking, and then they are, and then it's a card attack against them. And the final rule, just for nuance's sake, is that bosses are treated as a different card type than summons. For example, Forest Sage says you can rest it to give a summon you control 2 strength. I can't do that on a boss. For strategic purposes, I'm going to end my turn. I don't want to attack with Glorious Sun against Lava Giant because if I do, they could replace their board with 3 very powerful summons and just attack my boss a bunch of times, dealing damage to my life and defeating me without even needing to player attack me. So, I want to leave a weak summon alive on purpose in order to keep my life safe. So let's see how Red's next turn plays out. Now watch what happens here. Lava Giant is going to attack Glorious Sun. Because of Glorious Sun's passive ability, that damage is directed to my life. So 14 strength versus 7 means I lose 7 life, and Lava Giant loses 14 strength, bringing it to 0 and defeating it and bringing me down to 7. You might already see where this is going. Because they're allowed to card attack my boss, they can do a play like this. Magma Soldier attacks Glorious Sun and uses its trigger ability to gain 3 strength when it attacks, bringing it up to 6. I deal 7 damage back to it with my 7 strength, defeating it, but leaving me with 1. And the final attack would be Lava Giant attacks the Glorious Sun, bringing me down to 0 life and losing me the game. One of the best things about Boss as a luckless trading card game is that it's very easy to rewind the game and play out a new line. That's one of the best things about exploring in this game and learning from your mistakes. Being able to look at a previous turn and say, oh, I know where I messed up. I shouldn't have, for example, called Glorious Sun that turn. Means that you can learn every single time you play. For the sake of our new players, and I hope you'll play this way too, let's rewind the match, and let's give the Glorious Sun player a fair shot at winning through learning through experience. And after playing out the rest of the game, I found a path to victory for Yellow. I sped up the rest, and in this match, Yellow just barely survived. They managed to run Red out of cards, leaving them defenseless. Most of your games of Boss will likely end with a boss being called, then using that boss to player attack on the same turn, or using its incredibly strong ability to win the game. But when you're evenly matched, especially when you're learning from your mistakes, you can get really intense matches like this one. So that was everything you need to know for Boss. Like I was saying at the beginning, a blitz battle is typically a lot faster, especially for new players, since they'll be making some mistakes in their first couple of moves, and it usually leads to a strong opening for one of the bosses. That being said, playing the game multiple times and learning from your mistakes every time can really enable you to make strong lessons learned, even when you're playing a full game. So remember, combine these 2 piles together to make a full deck. Once you're ready to start playing, you'll have 10 summons in your castle and 10 spells in your spellbook for a complete starter deck. Be sure to reference the rules cards as mentioned in the video, and I hope you have a great time playing. Welcome to the Battle of Skill.